Hi everyone, and welcome to Module 6 and Week 6, the reading for our class. This week you're going to be reading on project planning, the schedule, and budget, which is part of Chapter 6. And we're going to be looking at the triple constraint again, and this time we're looking at the budget component of the triple constraint. Remember, the triple constraint is scope, schedule, budget. We know that project managers need to keep these three in balance, because when one of them is out of balance, it will impact the other area. We had a good conversation about that in the last video, and it's important. Budget is no less important to keep track of and to manage throughout our project process. So, project schedule. Projects are divided into different phases, activities, or tasks. And what we do with these activities or tasks is we assign durations, how long we believe it will take us to complete that particular task. We organize tasks in milestones, and milestones typically represent a deliverable within the project. And the deliverable can be maybe a design or maybe a project status. There can be a variety of different deliverables throughout a particular project. Usually a deliverable is not a single thing when you get down to the very end of the project. Here is the completed whatever, the widget, the completed widget that we designed and we went about building, right? So throughout that process of creating this new widget that we've never done before, we have various other deliverables along the way. So typically we sequence our tasks into deliverables, and these deliverables often become milestones. Tasks are typically organized by deliverable. Tasks need to be sequenced on a variety of different things, but especially sequenced around resources. Resource availability as well. So if you think in terms of a website that needs to be built, so we have a variety of different tasks that are involved in website development. Some of the tasks at a very simplistic level may include gathering requirements, then designing the website, then gathering data, then building the website, validating and testing the website, and then the implementation or rollout. Well, we certainly can't implement or roll out or even test a database that hasn't been built. We don't want to build a database until we've gathered requirements and done a design. So there's a natural sequence involved in the tasks of building this database. So you need to think about the natural sequence of events, being sure that you're not doing things out of order, that you're not trying to accomplish a task that requires information or data or a completed piece from something later that is scheduled to be done later on. So that's why we are very concerned. That's why scheduling can be really challenging, especially in really large projects. We want to make sure that everything gets done at the right time to feed each other and to keep it moving along. And that's why we try to do it based on milestones, deliverables and milestones. So we have a Gantt chart, and a Gantt chart is a visual representation of a schedule. We use Microsoft Project, our software tool, to manage our schedules, and our Microsoft Project software tool will allow us to create this Gantt chart. It'll allow us to create network diagrams. We need a network diagram so that we can see the critical path. And the critical path along the project is the longest path through the project and is the shortest time in which the project can be completed. Now, if you think about a project there with a lot of tasks, there can be a number of different ways to get through from all the way from task A to Z. A lot of different ways we can get through that. And the critical path is going to show us the longest path and is going to define the shortest amount of time that we're going to be able to get through it. Now, why is it important to know the critical path? we need to manage the tasks on the critical path very carefully, because any failure on a task on the critical path will delay the overall project. It has to. I mean, there's no other way that it can work. If a task on the critical path fails and is delayed, the overall project will be delayed. And again, we use Microsoft Project as a tool for that. We also have project budgeting. Now, if you look at page 161, you'll notice that there are 5 steps to cost estimating. The first part of project budgeting is estimating our costs. And we estimate costs based on resources. We can have people, we can have raw materials, or we can have other indirect costs, such as the cost of renting equipment. Maybe we need to rent some equipment on our project. The rental fee or the purchase of equipment, that becomes a project cost. So we need to estimate what these costs are going to be, and there's a 5-step process for that listed on page 161. It includes first defining what resources we're going to need to perform the task. We need to determine the quantity of the resources that we're going to need. We may need 3 web developers. We may need 2 backhoes or skip loaders for our project that we need to rent that equipment. So we need to know how many of the resources we need. We need to determine the cost of each of those resources, so we need to do a good job of finding out ahead of time what the costs are going to be. We can always use the internet. Sometimes we have to pick up the phone, call people, ask, what does it cost to rent a backhoe? What does it cost to rent a skip loader? We need to calculate the cost of these activities based on how many we need, how long we're going to need them, and what the cost is going to be. People resources, typically we do that on a per hour basis, but that's not the only way we can estimate the cost of a resource. We can estimate the cost of a resource for a day or a month or a flat fee. It's certainly possible, but typically we see people done by an hourly rate. So once we've calculated the cost of the activity, then we need to ensure that the resources are leveled, which basically means that resources are not over allocated. You obviously can't have one person working 100% of their time on 2 different tasks at the same time. It's just not possible. So that would be an over allocation of that resource. And you'll want to pay attention to how your resources are allocated and look for things that are over allocating. So here's some things that you need to know from this week's reading. You want to know what a Gantt chart is and how it is used. You want to know about network diagrams, and the 2 specific ones are the activity on node and the critical path analysis. What are predecessors, successors, or parallel? You're going to be doing predecessors in your Microsoft Project task this week for Husky Air. What is the critical path? We talked a little bit about that. The book will give you more information. What is a PERT chart? How is a PERT chart used? What is the precedence diagramming method, or the PDM method? And then what are the 4 fundamental relationships in PDM diagramming? And that information you can come back onto page Yes, page 156 will give you the information on precedence diagram and those 4 different start to start, finish to finish, start to finish relationships that you need. And then what type of costs can be applied to resources in a project. I just was saying that it can be people, it can be raw materials, or it can be other indirect type costs. And then what does it mean to baseline a project? There's a nice section on baselining. Okay, well, that's all we have for this week. Continue on to the next video where I will discuss the assignment for you for the week. I'll see you there.